Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Monday, December the 7th, Iraqi Cardinal Rafael Sacco reacts to the Vatican's announcement of Pope Francis's scheduled visit to his country next March, his first apostolic journey in 15 months. A jubilee to mark the 200th anniversary of the birth of Korea's first native Catholic priest gets underway in Seoul. And the Secretary for the Pontifical Council for Christian Unity shines light on the just-published ecumenical guidebook that encourages bishops to promote ecumenism. In the Vatican, I'm Linda Bordoni. The Holy See Press Office announced today that Pope Francis will make his first apostolic journey for 15 months next March. The Pope will spend 4 days in Iraq from the 5th to the 8th of March 2021. He will visit Baghdad, the plain of Ur, Mosul and Karkosh in a sign of hope for the long-suffering nation, as Devon Watkins reports.
Pope Francis is set to break a 15-month hiatus from international travel with what is sure to be an historic visit to the Middle Eastern nation of Iraq. The director of the Holy See Press Office, Matteo Bruni, announced the news on Monday, adding that the Pope had accepted the invitation of the Republic of Iraq and the local Catholic Church. It will be an apostolic journey covering 4 days and 4 Iraqi provinces. According to the press office statement, he will visit Baghdad, the plain of Ur, which is linked to the memory of Abraham, the city of Erbil, as well as Mosul and Karakosh in the plain of Nineveh. The Pope's detailed itinerary will be released at a later date and will take into consideration the evolution of the worldwide health emergency. Pope Francis has long expressed his desire to visit Iraq. Already in June 2019, he said he had planned on traveling there in 2020 to help shore up a peaceful future. The Pope's visit will come as the realization of a dream of his predecessor, Pope St. John Paul II. The Polish Pope had planned to travel to Iraq at the end of 1999, but his visit was postponed by Saddam Hussein and never took place. Preparations for Pope Francis's visit seemed to be nearing completion earlier this year when he met Iraq's president in late January. The Holy See Press Office said at the time that the two spoke about preserving the historical presence of Christians in the country and highlighting the need to guarantee their security and a place in the future of Iraq. Christians' presence in Iraq, however, has been drastically diminished over the past 2 decades. A drawn-out war and the occupation of the plain of Nineveh by the so-called Islamic State reduced their number to between 300 and 400,000. In that context, Pope Francis's visit to Iraq in the spring will surely bring a breath of fresh hope to this long-suffering nation. I'm Devon Watkins.
And when Iraqi Cardinal Luis Rafael Sacco, the Patriarch of Babylon of the Chaldeans, heard of the news of Pope Francis's scheduled visit to his country, he told Vatican Radio that his people are in dire need of a message and presence of hope.
His Holiness will come to visit us in Iraq just to bring us his support and also a word of hope. We are living in a bad situation, not only the pandemic, but also this political situation, economic situation. Therefore, his presence a meaning for us, but not only for Christians, but also for all Iraqis. Now it is the moment to speak about his universal letter. You all are brothers, and also the document he signed in Abu Dhabi. We are all brothers and members of the same family, and we are not enemies. Therefore, we have to build the trust between us and to work, cooperate with each other for the benefit of our society and the future.
And that was His Beatitude Cardinal Luis Rafael I Sacco, Patriarch of Babylon of the Chaldeans. The administration and allies of President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela now hold the reins of all power to reign in the country, having predictably won the National Assembly elections in an election which has been boycotted by the opposition. James Blears has more.
The National Electoral Council announces that with more than 67.5% of the vote, adding up to 5 million votes cast, the Great Patriotic Alliance has swept the board. In a nationwide broadcast, President Nicolas Maduro termed it a great victory, saying that Venezuela now has its new National Assembly. A very different story back in 2015, when the opposition won the National Assembly with a landslide majority. An opposition leader, Juan Guaido, who's since been recognized as the president of the nation by more than 50 countries, was at its head. He and his supporters have called this latest development fraudulent and have boycotted it, discarding the process. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's called the election a sham. More than likely, further and deeper biting U.S. economic sanctions will swiftly follow. Technically, the former National Assembly was a power holdout blot against the administration, but back in 2017, the government established the National Constituent Assembly, which did the day-to-day running of the country minus international treaties. The 277 seats National Assembly is now in the hands of President Nicolas Maduro's government and will be officially starting up on January the 5th. To the victor, the spoils. The economy is in abject ruins, facing every aspect of bankruptcy. The oil industry is almost at a standstill, and daily life's becoming harder, plus painfully pinched, with massive shortages in all the basic foodstuffs, with wages unable to match or even get close to keeping pace. For Vatican News, James Bliss reporting.
At European Union headquarters in Brussels, talks between the UK and the EU have resumed as the two sides make a final bid to reach a post-Brexit trade deal. Disputes over fishing and business rules are continuing, but the UK government said agreement was still possible with time in short supply. The EU mood was described as gloomy as chief negotiator Michel Barnier met UK counterpart Lord Frost in Brussels. Prime Minister Boris Johnson will speak to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen later today. If no deal is done and ratified by the end of the year, the UK and EU could introduce import charges on each other's goods. The Korean Catholic Church is marking a year-long celebration of the 200th anniversary of the birth of St. Andrew Kim Tae-gon, the first native Catholic priest of Korea, who was martyred in the 19th century. As Robin Gomes reports, Cardinal Andrew Yum-Suk-jung of Seoul presided at the Jubilee's inaugural Mass in Seoul's Myeongdong Cathedral on November the 29th, and celebrations will continue until November the 27th next year.
Born on August the 21st, 1821, St. Andrew Kim Tae-gon was beheaded in Seoul on September the 16th, 1846, during the wave of persecution by the Joseon dynasty. He's among the 103 Korean martyrs canonized by St. Pope John Paul II in Seoul on May the 6th, 1984. Their feast is celebrated on September the 20th. Bishop Lazarus Yu Heung-sik of Daejeon, who is in charge of the bicentenary celebrations, regards St. Andrew Kim as a guide and symbol of faith lived in charity and brotherhood. These celebrations are an auspicious occasion for the spiritual growth of the Church in Korea, he told Vatican News. The theme of the celebrations is, "Are you a Catholic?" the question St. Andrew Kim faced during his interrogation in prison. Andrew Kim's reply, "Yes, I am Catholic," cost his life. For our martyrs, faith was the most important value, Bishop Lazarus said, adding, the Korean bishops wanted to take into consideration precisely this question as a strong warning to all of us Christians today. The bishop said the interrogator's question calls us to reflect seriously on our identity and our consistency as Catholics. He expressed the Church's concern about the growth of individualism, materialism, and competition in Korean society, and the influence of materialism, secularization, and clericalism among Korean priests. He hopes the 200 birth centenary celebrations of St. Andrew Kim will be a time for the evangelical, spiritual, and pastoral conversion of Korean priests who need to rediscover their passion for evangelization. He also hopes that through the grace of this Jubilee year and the protection of St. Andrew Kim, he also hopes that Korean priests will find joy in walking on the path of Christ, living a more coherent life, poor in worldliness and rich in gospel values. I am Robin Gomes.
In an apostolic letter issued in the form of a motu proprio, Pope Francis amends the canon law of the Oriental churches to require the Apostolic See's approval for the valid recognition of new institutes and societies of eparchial law. Father Benedict Mayaki explains more.
The latest amendments to Canon 435 and 506 establish that eparchial bishops must receive written permission from the Apostolic See to establish an institute or society of eparchial law in the Eastern Catholic Churches. This apostolic letter comes after the motu proprio Authenticum Charismatis of the 4th of November 2020, with which Pope Francis modified canon law for the Latin Church, requiring the same written permission from the Apostolic See for the establishment of institutes of consecrated life. The new amendments to the laws will be promulgated in L'Osservatore Romano and will come into force on the 8th of December. They will subsequently be published in the official commentary of the Acta Apostolicae Sedis. The apostolic letter notes that since the early days of the Church, some of the faithful have felt called to consecrate their lives in a special way to the service of God, leading to what will eventually be later known as the profession of the evangelical counsels of chastity, poverty, and obedience. With the creation of various religious families established for the welfare of the entire body of Christ, the Church welcomes these various forms of consecrated life as a manifestation of the richness of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. The Secretary of the Congregation for the Oriental Churches, Archbishop Giorgio Demetrio Galaro, in an interview with Vatican News, explained that with these latest amendments, Pope Francis is creating a similar legislative instrument for the whole Church, both of the East and of the West. I'm Father Benedict Mayaki.
And finally, the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity has just published an ecumenical vademecum, or guidebook, addressed to bishops and intended to encourage and assist them in the work of ecumenism in their ministry. Bishop Brian Farrell is the Secretary for the Pontifical Council, and in an interview with Vatican Radio's Christopher Wells, he speaks about why the vademecum is necessary.
Well, there are a number of reasons why it seemed to us necessary to do something like this. First of all, the ecumenical commitment of the Catholic Church is 60 years old in the sense that it began formally with the Second Vatican Council. Now, in 60 years, two things have happened. Much has been developed in the ecumenical relations with the other churches. Much has happened. We are at a very different place than we were at the time of the Council. And therefore, we have to constantly keep everything up to date, in a sense. The second thing is that we have now a new generation of priests and bishops who did not personally experience the changed atmosphere that the Council brought to our Catholic Church in opening up a new relationship with the other Christian communities and churches. So it seemed to us necessary to remind everybody that we are deeply and irrevocably, as John Paul used to say, committed to this task.
And that was Bishop Brian Farrell, Secretary of the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. You can also follow us on our web portal, on Facebook page and on Twitter. My thanks go to Roberto Colangeli in studio in the Vatican. I'm Linda Bordoni. Bye-bye.